Hello, everyone, and welcome to Influ-Men-Sirs, a podcast in which we talk about influential men who are influencing other men, be they fictional or real life, in all walks of life. And in this case, today we are talking about Sir Duncan the Tall, the protagonist of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms and the novellas of George R. R. Martin's Duncan Egg stories. We'll be exploring what his relationship is like with his own masculinity and how he shapes the outlook of masculinity that others around him may have. So I'm Robert, or Bob, and I'm joined here today by my colleague Caleb, who is going to quickly say hello.
Yes, howdy, folks. Therapist based in Portland, and I'm so excited that Bob, someone else, is hosting for today. I get to just chat and relieve all of the stress that comes with I put it all on him. So yeah, I guess you guys can say how you think he did, but yes,
What you don't know is that
I'm loving life over here.
I'm just going to ask you all the questions and then not offer anything of my own. Interesting. Thanks for that point. And then just move on. That's how I'm going to handle this.
You can do it. That'd be technically hosting. So that's your prerogative.
I guess so. So we are exploring, as I said, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and in particular, the character of Sir Duncan the Tall. I guess nine kingdoms. Spoilers, 9. It's technically 9, thanks to...
Whoops, yes, spoilers.
Thanks to the egghead in the story, who happens to know many facts about the history and makeup of the great houses and kingdoms of Westeros.
Sure.
These stories are adapted from George R. R. Martin's Duncan Egg novellas, as we mentioned, and it's the third television adaptation that HBO has done, set in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. And it follows the exploits of Sir Duncan the Tall, who is played by Peter Claffey, an unbelievably disarmingly charming giant of a man, and his squire Egg, played by Dexter Sol Ansel, or Ansel. I realized I should have looked up how to pronounce his name, and who is secretly Aegon Targaryen, the son of Prince Maekar, the younger brother of the heir to the throne. And as he reluctantly welcomes Egg as his charge, Duncan comes to realize that he has much to learn about the politics and history of Westeros and the way that the great houses interact with one another. And he gets thrust into some very momentous events quite by accident.
Sure does.
I thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about how Dunk finds himself in this circumstance and how his relationship with his mentor, Sir Arlen, has shaped his outlook on things. But before we get into all of that, I thought we could take a minute to do your favorite thing, Caleb, which is talk about where he falls on the Enneagram, which is the Enneagram is a personality modeling tool that has 9 different types and then various subtypes, and we talk about how each of those core fears and core motivations may drive individuals and characters to behave in certain ways. And Caleb is our resident expert on that topic, so I thought I would give it over to you to put.
I sure am.
Yeah.
And this is probably the most frequently skipped of sections, but it's okay. You guys, you indulge me. You let me have my moment, and then we go from there. But yes, Sir Duncan. So I think that Sir Duncan would fall under the category of the loyalist, type 6. In particular, even more inside baseball Enneagram stuff, perhaps even more likely to be skipped. Self-preservation 6. So within the system, there's the types like Bob's been talking about, and within that there is a difference in variation of how that type manifests. So there's phobic, and then there's counterphobic within type 6. And I think that he would fall a little bit more into the phobic category. He has moments where he gets very much in the counterphobic. And essentially what that means is it's a relationship that Sir Duncan has to the core emotion of fear.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of how he's able to alleviate that fear is to talk quite a bit about Sir Arlen of Pennytree and anything he has to say about any matter. Right. He has this reference point, this system of authority that he draws from quite frequently. And also the thing that I think is really important for Sir Duncan is honor, is integrity, is doing things by the code, and in this instance, code of being a knight of the 7 and then later 9 kingdoms. So that's what I would say. That's what I'm banking on. But
So I think you and I actually came to the same conclusion about Sir Duncan. That's where I had placed him as well. And I think one of the things that also is you have those instances where the points on the Enneagram. Well, we've got 9 kingdoms. We've got 9 points on the Enneagram.
Hey, there we
We've
go.
got 7 new gods, but we'll talk about them in a minute. Maybe there's 2 that we don't know about. I guess, R'hllor might count. Who knows?
True.
But in those moments of where he's feeling really empowered, he gravitates towards taking charge and taking risks and using his particular gifts with regards to seeing, potential outcomes to jump in and like try to make a name for himself and protect those around him. So I think, yes, we came to, I think, the exact same conclusion about Sir Duncan. So I would say we can stamp this one as a well typed. So I want to jump over directly to talking about something you brought up, which is his relationship to Sir Arlen. So before we go much further, a quick pause to say that we will be discussing the entirety of season 1. Another disclaimer to say, so there will be spoilers throughout. And another disclaimer to say that, and I don't know about you, Caleb, I have not read any of the Duncan Egg books. I have read summaries
of them.
Either.
If you guys want to stop playing, trash us, get so mad at us for not referring to the book, only knowing the show, we understand. But for engagement purposes, please continue to listen and watch and all that kind of stuff. So
yes. And if you want to make a case as to why we should read the books, something which I am likely to do anyway, because I do like this universe and I enjoy the content there, I will happily listen to it. That said, we are going to focus exclusively on what's shown in the show and the performances that these actors and the writers and the director have kind of shaped as far as the content of it. So with that regard, Sir Arlen of Pennytree is a surrogate father to Dunk and the only real father figure that we know that he has at this point. We know he grew up an orphan, or at least a street rat, a la Han Solo in on the streets of King's Landing in Flea Bottom specifically. And we get some tragic information about how he meets Sir Arlen. But I'm curious how you feel the model of manhood has informed Sir Duncan's approach to life, in particular, his initial reluctance to take on Egg as his squire. And I think there's other reasons for that, but.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think that one of the things that the show does really well to great comedic effect is sort of attaching meaning that Sir Duncan took from Sir Arlen's teaching that in some ways was more caught often than it was taught. This is a distinction sometimes I talk about with clients. When you grow up in a family, right, you have certain things that you were directly taught, right? Which is, carry yourself in this way or be an honest person or whatever. It might be something that a mom or a dad or, Sir Arlen might have said directly, right? Versus other things that are a little bit more caught. They're kind of more things that Sir Duncan might have observed Sir Arlen doing and then interpreted that as a code or protocol or way of being in the world. And I think that it's interesting because it feels to me like Sir Duncan was more just astounded based on his previous life experience and the harshness and severity that's true of Westeros. That's true of A Song of Ice and Fire, right? Mm-hmm. In general, we in a nihilistic world. We're in a setting that's dark AF, right? Brutal, harsh, drawing very much, obviously, literally on the Dark Ages and medieval feudal times. And so I think the fact that, truth be told, Sir Arlen is like kind of okay, kind of decent. It feels to me like Sir Duncan blows that up and in some ways makes him out to be this astounding, chivalrous, wonderful, incredible man. And I think the show, often to comedic effect, was kind of showing he was kind of he's another guy.
Yeah.
He had he had his moments. So yeah, go for it.
Yes, and even Duncan allows for that less than rosy picture on occasion when he's going around initially trying to get sponsorship to enter the tournament at Ashford, which is something that the whole premise of this first season is he wants to compete so he can make a name for himself and so he can continue, gain some money, gain some renown, and maybe find work. And it's
Get over
it's
the
just
hedge. Might say.
Yes, get over the hedge. He needs to get over the hedge and into the walled garden beyond. That's what he's trying to do. Little did he know that the walled garden is full of drunkards and abusers and all kinds of wretched, evil people who just happen to live in pretty gardens.
And a Baratheon that reminds you of a Lannister from 100 years in the future.
Lionel Baratheon, what a guy!
Yeah,
he's an interesting character. I'd love to talk more about him in the future. He was
my favorite little side character, but yes,
he's a delight. And an absolute mess. But it's interesting to think about how I think you make I really love the point of teachings that are caught instead of explicitly taught. And I think there's this idea that the way that we kind of see things play out when Sir Duncan first gets connected with Sir Arlen is he just follows him until Sir Arlen relents and just takes him in. It's not that he actively sought him out. It's not that he really truly welcomed him. And so I think that shapes the ongoing relationship there, where it's like, oh, it's convenient. I have this very strong, healthy young lad who wants to follow me around and help me with all my bags and gear and will spar with me on occasion and keep watch while I'm
6'4", 6'5".
Yeah.
Pretty good to be around in the perilous world of Westeros, having this dude alongside.
Yes, the only person taller is maybe the mountain and one whatever his name is, the giant. Yeah.
Oh, Hodor. And the
Hodor.
Hound. Yeah, we got lots of, and Brienne. We got lots of tall people, but in this story, just one.
Since genetics and inherited traits are such a key part, maybe he's the progenitor of all these people, and we just don't know it. We could see later on.
We don't know. We don't know.
Yeah. So there could be that piece as well. But I think it's interesting that there's such a point. So we learn, and I think it's pretty easy. Going back to the beginning, and you probably suspected from the start that he's not really a knight, that Sir Arlen never knighted him. And you don't know if it's really hard to say and that's kind of the last question he asks Sir Arlen as Sir Arlen dies. Why did you never make me a knight? And it's that we have to wonder at his motivation for that. And perhaps we'll see it in future seasons, or it's revealed in the books. Again, did not read the book, so I don't know what's going on there.
We will.
Yeah, but we will. Yes, we will. There's something to be said about the fact that maybe Sir Arlen was just trying to give this kid a better shot at life and trying not to drag him into petty squabbles by making him a hedge knight, relying on someone else's good graces. So there could be some. It's more along the line. I think it's more likely that the guy was just like doing the best he could, and probably didn't even think about the fact that was maybe something Sir Duncan wanted, because there's a very real chance he never explicitly said, I'd like to be a knight. He just was there. So we'd have to find out. Again, there's probably more content that addresses this, but we're going off of what we've seen in season 1. Other thoughts about Sir Arlen before we move on to the next question I had?
In some ways it's just kind of more of the same, as far as I just sort of like, this is a bit of a tangent, so you've been warned. Both of the guests of Influ-Men-Sirs both have ADHD, so buckle in, folks, because we're going to go on some tangents. So, hold on to your horses, you might say. I think that what I liked about Sir Arlen, but also just the show in general, is, I alluded to it before, but man, Westeros is nihilistic AF. It is just a bleak place. And we know the politics of 95% or more of shite people. Just folks that are not good human beings. So there's just something striking about, Sir Arlen is kind of like we were hinting at before, a decent dude. He is no moral stalwart by any stretch of the imagination. But like you said, followed by this kid followed him, I should say, for quite some time. And eventually he just takes him in and in his own weird, non-perfect manner, takes care of him. And I think as a consumer of this Westerosi story this time, it just stands in such intense contrast to the rest of the stories that we've heard of in this setting, in this world, right? Obviously, it's going to carry through more, I'm sure, as we talk about Sir Dunk himself. Um, More of a moral fellow, I would argue, than Sir Arlen West, but just sort of this good person in a flat arc in a nihilistic world. It really landed, and it really stuck out to me in a way that I just kind of felt burned a little bit through Game of Thrones. It wasn't just the terrible writing and all the catastrophe of I mean, that did not help anything. But there's just something to the darkness, the severity, the filth of these worlds. I mean, I love it. It's enjoyable. It's entertaining. But this just had this sincerity and good-heartedness that just can't be denied.
Yeah. I think that jumps in directly to what I wanted to ask about next, which is starting with really really Prince Darren Targaryen, the drunkard in the tavern that he meets, and he thinks, oh, it's just some random guy, but it's one of the most important noblemen of the royal family. It reveals that he's seen visions of Sir Duncan, kind of then and then later on in the series, and that he knows that there'll be he's a figure of import, and so he trusts. He sort of sets the things in motion by encouraging him to go and contact Egg, the stable boy, the person he thinks is a stable boy is actually his brother, Aegon, another prince and son of Maekar Targaryen. But this is just the beginning of kind of a long line of people who begin to throw their hat in with Sir Duncan. And it takes him a while, it takes him a few tries. He makes several unsuccessful overtures to, other minor houses. I think he goes for the Tullys and a couple other folks. And he winds up befriending Lionel Baratheon by stumbling into his party. And then he also makes friends with the Fossaways, and kind of brings them into his camp initially. But what I'm curious about is, what are the traits that Duncan possesses that you say are the traits that make these people willing to help him, often at great personal risk?
Sincerity.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I just think that again, this story in this televised manner comes perfectly in this world and setting, because again, the two shows that came before it were so harsh and intense. So to have this character, and it's not even to say that, like, obviously I can think of several characters that were sincere or kind-hearted in the original show. So it's not that that's not true. So Davos and others that were just goated. Love them a lot too. But there's something about when this whole show is sort of more about a normal guy. Like the other two, shows in this setting, and obviously a lot of the books as well, focused on the royals. And in some ways, as is the whole point of the whole thing, right? And I'm not even knocking that. But I think why the royals themselves and other folks get so drawn into this fellow is he's kind of speaking into what Westeros could be. Like, what if knighthood was not just gestures? What if good, kind, decent men existed, is that something worth fighting for? And as you're alluding to, one of the better moments in the show is truth be told, there's so many characters in the show that I can't quite remember, but he's the next in line Targaryen, the one
Uh,
that vouches for him,
Daron.
right at
Oh
the
no,
end.
not Daron.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, Daron is the drunk. Goodness gracious, I can't. I can't remember his name. I should.
Well, yeah, I mean, regardless,
Baelor.
you can go ahead.
Baelor
Yeah,
Targaryen.
Baylor.
Prince
Yes, yes, yes,
Baelor.
yes, 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 absolutely. But anyway, that is someone as powerful as him, right? Because he's next up. He's
Mm-hmm.
going to be the king next. So, um, that sincerity, that goodness. I mean, even in the first interaction that they have, where he can tell that it would have made more sense for Sir Duncan to kind of say, like, so and so made me a knight. Where's my land? Where's my horse? Where's my, come in with a sense of entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, he starts off with honesty, with sincerity, almost to his own, I don't know, shame is the right word, or maybe shame's too strong a word, but just there's no other ulterior motive. And that's often the case in this world and setting. Is people have more motive. And he is just as pure can be.
Yeah, he just wants a shot. I think you hit the exact word that I was considering as like what I think his single greatest virtue is, which is that earnestness, that sincerity that he has, that he brings to everything. And what comes with it also is this boldness, because it's just this like, hey, I'm asking because it's something that I feel I need to ask. And it does come from that place of like, oh well, I'd better. He's very willing to deal on the level. He recoils at that idea of participating in a rigged joust to help Sir Lord Ashford like regain his fortunes and recoup some loss. There's something to be said for that as well. And I don't think that's the case of, a good chunk of the knights that we see comporting themselves in this way. I think this is one of two really meaningful pictures, I think, of this concept of chivalry. I guess there's a few. One is that George R.R. Martin has put out. I think it's between him and Brienne of Tarth for like the
Yes.
most noble knights in all of Westeros. And
Yep.
then weirdly enough, Jaime Lannister comes in as being relatively, I mean, he saved the kingdom at the expense of breaking his own oath, but it's because he knew he needed to protect the innocent. Um, but he's a very complicated and kind of unlikable figure through most lenses. But I think the thing that's so delightful about Dunk is he's a guy you just really want to root for, because he's like, it's a little bit of a fish out of water story. It's a little bit of Ulrich von Liechtenstein going on with decidedly less Paul Bettany in this, unfortunately. Maybe he'll be in the second season. That would be pretty funny. But there's something to be said for the fact that he represents, I think, a lot of these knightly virtues very well, despite not being a knight, kind of in the same way that Brienne of Tarth does. And there's this idea of it like being something that that's aspirational to him, and not a sense of entitlement. It's like he came from something so very different that he knows he had to kind of fight and will himself to this place. And this isn't like a bootstrap narrative. He didn't bootstrap himself. He had a lot of help along the way, and he's the first person to admit that. He doesn't say, I'm the best, I'm really great at this. He always points towards his teacher and someone who brought him up, even though that guy was just a guy, as you have said.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, I feel like he embodies a knight is not what you do, but it's who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's all of these lords and soon to be kings. They can kind of see that, yeah, Stu hasn't done anything. He has no right. He has no inheritance. But there's something about the way that he literally carries himself that sort of calls upon the best of those around him Bob's going to love this, who I'm going to compare him to here. He reminds me of another character that we've had lengthy discussion about, who entered into a world and setting of smugness and lack of sincerity and harshness and coldness, and warmed everybody's heart and wore them all down only with time. And that is Ted Lasso. He is the Ted Lasso of Westeros. So not, bar for bar exact personality or anything like that. But what I mean is kind of this like flat arc. Sir Duncan doesn't necessarily grow too much. He may confront some of his fears about his own, limitations or his own status as being an orphan, being this hedge knight. But characteristically, he doesn't change so much. Egg changes. Baelor changes. The Baratheon, he changes.
Lionel kind of changes. I think
he's flat-ish.
He's more an agent of change than one who becomes changed himself.
Yes. I mean, I think he engages with Sir Duncan and likes him for similar reasons that the other folks do. But he also just kind of loves that Sir, like you just said, he's an agent of chaos. He likes that Sir Duncan like mucks everybody's like understanding of how this world works. So that's probably what he enjoys most about him. I'm thinking about when they're both at that tree and he's kind of like, come with me, come to Storm's End.
Yeah.
Let's do all this crazy shit, man. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Right. And like, Dunk is not necessarily about that. And then he kind of gets all offended. Screw you then.
Yeah.
Kind of storms off. But yeah.
Yeah. Even then, I think I hope that there's a chance for the reconciliation of that friendship.
Yes.
But they could wind up being rivals in a strange way sometime down the line too. Again, don't know the rest of the material. I think it could go either way, but there's that it goes back to his being fond of him for that same earnestness where he comes, why are you in my tent? He's like, supper. I just wanted food. And he finds that so unbelievably charming. He's like, oh, well, you're not here to cause any problems. Let's dance and have a crazy time. He's also, the puckish character with his horns. He has this very like fairy creature aspect when you first meet him because he's sitting there and it's just like he is like the fairy king in his court. Then he's walked into this other world of debauchery and Dunk has walked in this other world of debauchery and excess. But it's like in many ways, like he's living out, Dunk is kind of getting the opportunity to live out his fantasy of finally becoming a knight. And what's interesting to me is when he's finally offered that, like it's everything he wanted going into this, a great house, like it's beyond what he could have wanted. Like now the second in line for the throne says, come live in my house, train under my master at arms, and teach my son how to be a better knight. And he says, I'm done with princes. It's like he walks away from it. So I want to challenge the observation that Dunk doesn't grow much as a character because he completely turns his back on what his motivation was in the very beginning of the series, which is coming in and taking on this role as a knight in someone's household. And I think it's something that speaks to a lot of like, I want to see the journey. I'm very interested to see what happens next with this character, which I haven't always been able to say for a lot of the shows that I've dug into. So his primary motivation for wanting to be a knight, I think, is just some degree of stability. But even though he is not a knight just yet, how does he uphold the knightly vows? We've talked a little bit about this. So the ones that we hear in the show and we've heard in other places, he says, in the name of the warrior, I charge you to be brave. In the name of the father, I charge you to be just. In the name of the mother, I charge you to defend the young and innocent. In the name of the maid, I charge you to protect all women. So, and then the understanding is that, like, I think when I was looking these up again to confirm them, there's some sense that perhaps that's just a snippet and there are more vows that go along with the other remaining gods, the other 7 gods. But it's interesting that this is, this seems like it is a ceremony associated with the new god, like these new gods, these 7 gods that came over with the Andals, right? And so this is like an adopted theology. It's not even the original theology of the Targaryens. So it's like this interesting notion of like a blending of many different cultures and national origins coming together. We're getting on tangents. We don't need to talk about this. But what are the ways that he upholds some of these vows? And I think we can point to some specific instances. But like the one that comes to mind is when he saves, if you'll pardon the pun, well, he saves the puppeteer, Tansel, and if you pardon the pun, he kind of rescues the Tansel in distress. And he's willing to, he knows this person is, of incredible importance. He knows it's the prince, and he jumps in and stops. It's like the thing that turns Baelor over to his side. He jumps in, and so like kind of defending the young and the innocent and protecting all women and being brave and being just. Like he's kind of doing all four of those things all at once in that one instance of stepping in and stopping this woman from being further maimed because she had the temerity to poke a little bit of fun at the Targaryens, and they weren't even really poking fun at the Targaryens. They were just trying to tell an entertaining story and make a few coppers so that they could have a meal and move on to the next town and continue telling their stories. So I think he's more inclined to have those. I started this out like I was asking a question, and then I just rambled on for a bit because I've been thinking about this.
Maybe you're answering it.
Yeah. His inclination towards protecting the innocent and seeking justice for those who are less fortunate is likely a product of his upbringing. And it's also, we get that flashback of seeing how he was sort of helpless to save Rafe, this girl that he loved, and who was his kind of like partner in crime in a literal sense in Flea Bottom.
Yeah.
And so that trauma of that is like, now that he's got the power to do something about it, he's never going to let something like that happen again if he can stop it. And so I think there's something, I think he's kind of being put up to be the sort of perfect chivalrous knight. And if you remember in like Game of Thrones in the series, Joffrey Baratheon is like poking fun, and he's looking through the white book, and he's like, "Oh, Sir Duncan the Tall, 4 whole pages about Sir Duncan the Tall. Well, what could he have done?" or something to that effect. And he's really smug and dismissive of it. And it's like, we know that this guy's got a very big story, and it's very important, and he's done enough deeds to be in essentially like the Bible of the who's who of knights in Westeros, like the Kingsguard. So we know that's where he's headed. We know from other sources that's where his story is going to go. But anyway, what are some ways you see him upholding the knightly vows? And I can refresh your memory on any of them if you need them.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that in some ways it is almost about I had something before and I've since lost it. Could you jog my memory actually a little bit of those vows?
The 4 vows are: in the name of the warrior, I charge you to be brave. In the name of the father, I charge you to be just. In the name of the mother, I charge you to defend the young and innocent. In the name of the maid, I charge you to protect all women.
Yes. Well, kind of what I was going to say is I think that he, in some ways, he doesn't have anything to him other than his word because he's a hedge knight.
Mm-hmm.
So in some ways, he wills this into being by kind of talking about these oaths, right? About sort of being this sincere, kind, and caring person. Kind of talks about how, Sir Arlen, he treated me well. He only beat me that one time. And then even even
like
when he's talking to Egg, I know he did it multiple times. But then even just talking with Egg, right? Like just trying to be fair and decent. Like in some ways, Egg is this perfect example because he doesn't know who Egg really is. For all intents and purposes, he's just a young little boy. He could quite literally beat him very easily, beat him senseless, and he never does, right? He only treats him. There's not necessarily a sense of like treating as equal per se, but there's definitely like a deference. There's definitely if you hold your end of the bargain of being a squire, right, and doing everything that's kind of that goes with that, right? Kind of drawing on the 6-ish energy of if you hold your end of the bargain, if you hold to your squirely duties, then I will always, sort of pull off my knightly duties. And so, yeah, I mean, the classic example, of course, is um, him defending the puppeteer. And it's also interesting because in some ways it's hard to pinpoint exact moments other than that one where it becomes crystal clear. So sort of what I was saying before about it's more just who he is. I feel like when he has a lot of these interactions with lords or even, some of the women that he comes across, there is no, like, with his word, he's kind of upholding these vows in these deeds. There's what's really true in the world of Westeros is contempt is just a given, especially from lords to underlings, from men to women. The list goes on and on and on. And Sir Duncan's not perfect, right? Sometimes he's harsh, sometimes he's cruel, but it's pretty rare. He tends to treat almost every single person, especially in conversation, with kindness, with courtesy, with deference. And I think that's why, again, it's hard for me to think of distinct actions, but I can think of several conversations where it felt knightly. It felt like powerful. And again, what we've been saying, sincere, genuine, this modern cheesy word, but authentic, right? Like in this world, it so stands in such intense contrast to most folks that find themselves in the world of Westeros. So.
Yeah. I think one of the other things as well is he's capable of letting himself sit in grief a little bit. And that's not necessarily one of the vows that I'm thinking about here, but we're talking about, like, I think conduct that is counter to the way things go. Like he's really sad that Prince Baelor died for him. And then I think Lionel makes a compelling point, a counterpoint, where he says he didn't risk anything. He's going out there against men in the Kingsguard who were sworn to protect him. They're not going to swing a vicious blow against him. And it's his own brother that struck him down. Like he risked nothing, whereas I risked a lot for you. And so that's, like, I think in some ways, like, he's also capable of, like, being called out and kind of changing his course of action if someone makes a good point. Because that's the thing that, like, it's some of those conversations that make him think, you know what, I need to go on a limb and I need to risk something to take care of Egg, because he's just a young kid and he's after this, and, like, maybe I get to get him out of this situation he's in with these other, with his siblings, and you can tell he's terrified of his brother, and I think even Dunk can see that. But it's their opportunity, like, it's he seems to be, this was a question I'd written down, which is just talking about the prevalence and pervasiveness of violence in Westeros. And Sir Duncan is someone who's trained to do violent deeds, and he kind of knows that this vocation of being a knight requires him to go into situations where violence is necessary. But he has a certain degree of hesitation, because you kind of can see that, like, he doesn't want to harm others unless it's necessary to protect someone from suffering a greater harm. And that's pretty remarkable for someone who came up in the violent environs that he found himself in as a child in Flea Bottom. And we see how tragically that plays out with the death of his friend. And it's like, even the immediate justice that's dispensed with Sir Arlen, like, just hacking those other two dudes to pieces. And so quasi-drunken stupor, like, in the name of the mother, leave the boy alone, or whatever he says. And he just comes in as like takes him out. And it's like, you can see why he admires him so much for that. And he feels a certain degree of debt. But it's also like, is this really what he wants? And I think he's wrestling with that at the very end of season 1, of, like, do I really want to get involved in this world where such violence and death is what's going to happen regularly? But I don't know if you have other thoughts about his relationship with violence.
I was just going to say to your, you had mentioned before about my sort of saying, oh, I see somewhat of a flat arc, and you saying, no, I feel like, he grows, he kind of changes and shifts. I think that you're right, because from what you're just sharing, it's not that he was never not world weary, But I think having this exposure to the political side of Westeros changes something inside of him. Obviously, this is like last couple of episodes, but it just causes him to sort of feel like, oh, I can really clearly see that this is not knighthood in all of the way that in these previous 4 to 5 episodes I thought knighthood was supposed to look like, right? These political bickerings, these sort of like mode of Westeros that is so far removed from the tenets that, I kind of inherited from Sir Arlen, from the protocol and the mode of being a knight that I want to inherit. I can tell that the higher up I go, the more and more that's not going to matter. And in some ways that ties to him being this consistent person, because from the jump, he's what's really important to him is the integrity of his word and deed, that there is not they're not separate entities. What you see is indeed what you get. And so I think tying to what you're talking about with violence, yes, like, I mean, even with Egg, right? He will sometimes, chastise him or say, yeah, you want to, I forget the term he uses for striking. It's
a cuff,
such
a clout or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I'm like, I've never heard of this term before. It made me laugh. But he'll, gesture at that, and then he like never does.
Yeah.
So you're right. Like, it's really clear to him that he does not want to use force if he doesn't have to. And just the callousness, the kind of frankly ridiculousness of trial by combat turning into this bigger thing because this prince is throwing a hissy fit. Modern day Joffrey for the time. So smug, so annoying. Like, him having to fight so earnestly to survive, let alone the heir to the throne dies. Like, it just brings on this intensity for Duncan that he's like, I don't want any part in that. So you're right. He pretty much is rejecting violence as much as he can.
Yeah. It's this idea that just because one is capable of violence doesn't mean you should rely on it to solve a problem. Like, he kind of hits one of the major criteria that I've heard, major criterion that I've heard, which is that a man doesn't start fights, he breaks them up.
Yes.
So he's comes in, and that's the kind of guy that I think Sir Duncan is. He's there to stop a fight from happening, and if he has to use force to stop the aggressor, he will. And I think that's kind of where it sets him apart. I
was just gonna say one last thing. We've talked about with the Mandalorian, and I'm trying to think of who else we've used this as a parameter, but obviously we don't want any kids watching this show.
No,
anything with Westeros, we don't want any kids watching this show. But if I'm talking about, a 16, 17, 18-year-old that's starting to get edgy with content that they're viewing or whatever it is, and they are sort of like, I really like Sir Duncan. I kind of like his energy. I like...
Thumbs up. Yeah.
Approved.
Yeah, you picked a good guy. Yeah.
He's a good guy. Yeah. Like, yes, very emulable. Do that.
So with this, I thought I would end our conversation today by assigning a metric or score to Sir Duncan, and it's the Aragorn scale, which is on a scale
yes.
of 1 to 5 Aragorn, son of Arathorns. How many Aragorns would you assign Sir Duncan for his excellence in manliness in a fantasy setting?
I mean, there's nowhere south of 4, and there was a part of me that said 5.
Fair. You half stars, half Aragorns are allowed. So an Arag or an Era is allowed, even an R. So I think I would give him somewhere between 4.25 and 4.5 Aragorns on this scale. Because I agree with you. I don't think he's south 100%. Of 4 by any means of the imagination. I think he's sitting in a place of trying to do right in an unjust world.
I was going to say, it's the setting that makes it so striking, right? Lord of the Rings and a lot of Tolkien stuff is more, we talked about it. Listen to our episode all about Aragorn, folks. We had fun on that one. But in that world, it's way more mythological, right? way more drawing on something that has timeless qualities, fable, anything like that. Whereas Westeros is like, not necessarily realistic, but what's the word I'm looking for? It has a more lived in quality to it. And so, again, George R. R. Martin is just a nihilist. He's such a, it feels like it comes across so strongly. So that's where I think that this character, this one that he wrote, I connect with so deeply, because it feels like Martin finally got to the softer side of himself and was charmed when he came up with this character, because he just, the way he's set apart in the shows and the setting itself is so drastic.
Very much so.
Yeah.
It's a Knight's Tale for a darker time.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
Caleb, it was a pleasure talking with you about Sir Duncan today. And for all of you listening, thank you for joining us to listen to our thoughts on this particular individual. Please check out other Influ-Men-Sirs podcasts that we've done so far. We'll cover additional fictional and real life people throughout the course of our time. And until we meet again, Valar Dohairis, my friends.
Hey y'all, Caleb here. Thank you for listening to our show today. Please like and subscribe wherever the heck you listen to pods, and make sure to follow us on all the socials at Influ-Men-Sirs. That is INFLU-men-Sirs. We'll see you next time. Peace.